The shrill ring of the wind-up alarm clock shattered the early silence of the small, drafty apartment on the outskirts of South Boston at 5 o'clock in the morning. Maya Jenkins blinked against the pale winter darkness, allowing herself just 3 seconds to savor the fading warmth beneath her worn quilt, before cold reality pulled her upright. There was no room for hesitation. Overdue heating bills were stacked on the small wooden counter. Her mother needed fresh prescriptions by Friday, and her 8-year-old daughter Chloe deserved every ounce of strength Maya could muster. "Mommy, are you heading to work already?" Chloe's soft, sleepy voice drifted from the narrow cot tucked near the bedroom wall, her small hands clutching a threadbare stuffed rabbit. Maya stepped softly across the creaking floorboards, kneeling to press a gentle kiss against her daughter's forehead before pulling the woolen blanket snugly up to her chin. "I'll be back just in time for supper, sweet girl," Maya whispered tenderly. "Watch over Grandma for me today, all right?" In the adjacent room, the raspy, shallow cough of 58-year-old Eleanor broke the quiet, a stark reminder of the congestive heart failure and diabetes that had steadily worsened over the past winter, consuming nearly half of Maya's meager bi-weekly paycheck. With a quiet sigh that carried the weight of her 28 years, Maya pulled on her navy blue maintenance uniform and walked down the frozen stairs toward the subway station. The commute toward the gleaming heart of downtown Boston took nearly 2 hours by public bus and the Red Line train, a daily journey Maya spent buried in an old second-hand administrative textbook on her cracked smartphone, clinging stubbornly to her lifelong dream of earning a stable office credential. At 28, life had granted her only a high school diploma and years of manual labor. Yet she refused to let exhaustion extinguish her hope for Chloe's future. The monolithic corporate tower where Maya worked rose 40 stories above the bustling waterfront, a cathedral of reflective glass that mirrored the gray Atlantic sky. For over 2 years, Maya had cleaned the executive suites from the 35th to the 38th floor, moving like an invisible ghost among hurried executives who spoke in rapid corporate jargon, their eyes forever glued to glowing screens. She emptied wastebaskets, polished mahogany desks, and dusted high windows in utter silence, accustomed to being treated as nothing more than a passing shadow in the background of powerful lives. That cold Tuesday morning, however, the executive floor hummed with an unfamiliar, chaotic energy outside the boardroom of Sterling Construction and Infrastructure. Sharp voices filtered through the heavy oak doors, echoing down the polished marble corridor with unmistakable panic and fury. "It cannot be real, Christian. Marry within 3 months or forfeit the entire enterprise? The trust indenture is ironclad, and grandfather's legacy will not survive your cousin's reckless spending." Maya tried her best to focus entirely on buffing the brass handrails, keeping her head low as the tension grew palpable in the chilled air. Suddenly, the heavy conference door swung open violently, and a tall, broad-shouldered man in a charcoal suit stormed out into the empty hallway, running both hands through his thick, dark hair in sheer exasperation. It was Christian Sterling, the 35-year-old chief executive officer whom Maya had only ever seen from a distance on promotional banners and financial journals. Known across New England as a fiercely private yet heavily scrutinized bachelor, Christian paced back and forth like a caged predator, slamming his palm against the wall in quiet despair as he muttered about impossible deadlines and familial ruin. Maya quietly gathered her cleaning supplies, attempting to step around the distressed executive without drawing attention, but the wheel of her supply cart let out a sharp squeak. Christian froze, spinning around on his heel until his sharp, amber-brown eyes locked onto hers with sudden, piercing intensity. "You," he said, stepping forward as Maya instinctively stepped back, clutching her microfiber cloth like a protective shield. "What is your name?" Maya swallowed hard, her throat dry as she answered, "Maya, sir. Maya Jenkins." He studied her weathered hands and steady gaze, asking how long she had worked in the building before abruptly asking, "Are you married, Maya?" "No, sir. I'm a single mother," Maya replied, her face burning with confusion and apprehension, wondering if she was about to be reprimanded or dismissed for lingering too close to executive affairs. Christian's eyes flared with an almost desperate spark of realization as he took 2 deliberate steps closer, the faint scent of sandalwood and expensive espresso accompanying him. "Maya," he said, in a voice dangerously calm yet trembling beneath the surface, "I need a legal wife immediately. Would you consider marrying me?" Maya felt her knees tremble, staring at Christian as if the towering executive had completely lost his sanity in the middle of his own corporate hallway. "Mr. Sterling, you cannot be serious," she stammered, gripping the metal bar of her cleaning cart to keep her balance while searching the corridor for hidden cameras or laughing colleagues. Christian ran a hand over his face, letting out a ragged breath before gesturing toward a private adjoining conference room. "I know how completely unhinged this sounds, but my grandfather's will stipulates that I must be legally married for 2 full years before my 36th birthday to retain majority ownership, or the company falls to my cousin." "Sir, you are speaking to the person who cleans your restrooms," Maya said firmly, crossing her arms as dignity pushed past her initial shock. "You have hundreds of socialite acquaintances who would jump at the chance to wear a diamond ring, so why corner someone who is just trying to earn an honest hourly wage?" Christian offered a bitter, self-deprecating smile, leaning against the edge of the conference table. "Because every socialite I have ever dated in this city had an agenda. One leaked corporate secrets to a hedge fund, another tried to blackmail me with recorded arguments, and the last was secretly feeding information to my cousin. You have worked here 2 years without ever asking for a handout, and you looked at me just now with honest disbelief, not dollar signs." "I know who you are, Mr. Sterling, and I am not naive," Maya countered, holding his gaze without flinching. "Just because I wear an apron and carry a mop does not mean I am blind to how the wealthy use people." Christian immediately straightened, holding up his hands in a gesture of sincere apology. "You are entirely right, and I apologize for sounding patronizing. I am desperate, Maya. I have 3 months to find someone willing to enter a legally binding civil union, and I am offering a formal contract with a financial compensation of $2 million, $500,000 upon signing, and the rest when we quietly file for divorce after 2 years. The room seemed to tilt beneath Maya's worn sneakers as the sum settled heavily between them. $2 million was more than she could hope to earn in 40 lifetimes of backbreaking manual labor. It meant cutting-edge cardiologists for her mother, safe housing far away from drafty radiators, and an untouchable college fund for Chloe. "You would pay that much for a piece of paper?" she asked softly, the defensive edge in her voice giving way to sheer astonishment. "It is a business arrangement," Christian explained carefully. "Separate residences, total privacy, and absolute discretion, though we would need to attend a few public charity galas so the board sees a legitimate union." "How do you know about my daughter and my mother?" Maya asked suddenly, her eyes narrowing as she remembered his earlier remark. Christian sighed, looking slightly guilty. "When I saw your badge outside, I had our human resources director pull your basic personnel file while we were standing there. I wanted to know if I was proposing this arrangement to someone with genuine responsibilities rather than a reckless adventurer." Maya stood up abruptly, her jaw clenched. "You ran a background check on my family in 5 minutes?" I needed to know who I was trusting with the survival of 10,000 employees, Christian said, his tone softening as he stepped toward the door to give her space. Please, take 3 days to think it over. No matter what you decide, your job here is entirely secure and no one will ever hear of this conversation. Maya looked out the panoramic glass window, watching the sea of commuters navigating the cold streets below, each fighting their own quiet battles for survival. 3 days, Maya whispered, nodding once before pushing her cleaning cart back into the bustling hallway with a racing heart. That evening on the packed outbound commuter train, the impossible figure of $2 million repeated in Maya's mind like a persistent drumbeat. At home, 8-year-old Chloe was diligently stirring a pot of canned tomato soup, while Eleanor sat resting her swollen ankles on an ottoman, breathing with noticeable difficulty. When Maya opened the medicine cabinet and saw only 2 blood pressure pills remaining, knowing the pharmacy refused refills without immediate payment, a cold knot tightened in her chest. She dialed her lifelong friend, Sarah, who worked as a receptionist at a nearby medical clinic, desperate for an outside voice of reason. Maya, you are talking about Christian Sterling, the man on the billboards along the expressway. Sarah gasped over the line after hearing the unbelievable proposal. What if this is some elaborate corporate trap? Men with that kind of money do not play by ordinary rules. Maya sat on her small balcony overlooking the icy alleyway, watching her breath mist in the freezing night air. He looked exhausted, Sarah, not dangerous. If half of that initial money can put Mom into a specialized cardiac clinic and guarantee Chloe's education, how can I let my pride stand in the way of saving my family? By Friday afternoon, the situation in the Jenkins household reached a breaking point when Eleanor collapsed in the hallway from a severe hypertensive spike, requiring an urgent ambulance ride to the crowded county hospital. Maya spent 6 agonizing hours in a cold waiting room, holding a sleeping Chloe on her lap, while doctors struggled to stabilize Eleanor's erratic heart rhythm with temporary medications. She needs daily specialized monitoring and expensive ACE inhibitors that your current plan simply does not cover, the weary attending physician explained bluntly. As Maya rode the slow city bus home the following morning, holding her mother's trembling hand, the memory of Christian's proposal ceased to be a wild fantasy and became a life-saving necessity. Maya arranged to meet Christian that Saturday afternoon, not in a grand downtown office, but inside her own modest 2-bedroom apartment where the true stakes of her life were laid bare. When the doorbell rang at 2 o'clock, Maya opened the door to find the billionaire standing in the narrow hallway, wearing dark denim and a simple wool coat, holding a vibrant bouquet of fresh sunflowers and a large art supply box. "Hello, Maya," Christian said, looking noticeably nervous as his eyes adjusted to the small peeling entryway. "I hope I'm not intruding." "It is small, Mr. Sterling," Maya stated plainly, stepping aside to let him enter the living room with its mismatched second-hand sofa and old television. "It feels like a real home," Christian corrected gently, his voice devoid of pity or condescension as he set the flowers on the kitchen table. Chloe peeked out from behind the bedroom door frame, her wide hazel eyes studying the tall visitor until Christian crouched down to meet her eye level. "You must be Chloe," he said with a warm, disarming smile, handing her the art kit filled with professional pastels, watercolors, and thick sketch pads. "Your mother mentioned you love to draw." The little girl's face lit up with an uncontainable joy that pierced Maya straight through the heart, watching Chloe instinctively wrap her arms around Christian's neck in a spontaneous hug of gratitude. Christian stiffened for a fraction of a second in surprise before gently patting the child's back, a look of profound, unguarded tenderness crossing his features. Eleanor emerged from her bedroom with a walking cane, and Christian immediately rose, greeting the older woman with deep, traditional respect, listening intently as Eleanor reminisced about the old neighborhoods of South Boston before the high-rises took over. Later that afternoon, while Chloe was immersed in painting at the small kitchen table, Maya and Christian sat across from one another on the worn sofa to finalize their terms. "I will agree to this arrangement, Mr. Sterling, but under my own strict conditions," Maya said, her voice steady and resolute. "First, half of every dollar you pay me must be placed immediately into an irrevocable trust fund in Chloe's name for her college education. Second, if at any moment this arrangement causes emotional harm to my daughter, I reserve the right to walk away immediately without penalty. And third, I will not be remade into a high society accessory. I remain myself." Christian looked at Maya with an expression of growing admiration, extending his hand across the small coffee table without a moment of hesitation. "Every single term is agreed, Maya. In fact, I would not have it any other way. We are partners in this, equal in every respect." As Maya clasped his strong, warm hand, an unexpected shiver traveled down her spine, recognizing that beneath the armor of corporate wealth and high-stakes legalities, Christian Sterling was a man carrying his own heavy burdens of loneliness and responsibility. The following week, Maya sat in the elegant downtown office of Harrison Bennett, the Sterling family's longtime legal counsel, reviewing 50 pages of meticulously drafted marital covenants. The veteran attorney adjusted his spectacles, watching Maya ask incisive questions regarding property protections, medical coverage riders, and non-disclosure clauses. "Christian has chosen an exceptionally prudent and sharp partner," Bennett noted with a quiet nod of approval, as Maya signed the final document with a steady hand, securing comprehensive private health coverage for Eleanor and an immediate down payment on Chloe's future. The wedding took place on a crisp, overcast morning at the historic City Hall in downtown Boston, stripped of ostentatious fanfare at Maya's request. Maya wore a simple, elegant navy dress purchased from a local department store, her hair pinned up naturally, while Christian arrived in a tailored charcoal suit that accentuated his athletic frame. With only Sarah, Eleanor, Chloe, Harrison Bennett, and Christian's devoted executive assistant, Clara, standing as witnesses, the municipal clerk read through the ancient vows of lifelong devotion, duty, and mutual honor. "Christian Sterling, do you take Maya Jenkins to be your lawful wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, from this day forward?" the clerk intoned in the quiet, wood-paneled room. Christian turned to Maya, his amber eyes reflecting a profound, unspoken gratitude as he answered firmly, "I do." When Maya repeated the solemn words, her heart hammered against her ribs, recognizing the immense weight of the promise they were making to the world. When the clerk declared them husband and wife, Christian leaned in to place what was supposed to be a polite, rehearsed kiss upon her cheek. But as Maya turned slightly, their lips brushed in a soft, electric contact that sent a jolt of heat through both of them, leaving Christian momentarily breathless and Maya's cheeks flushed with a radiant crimson. Following the brief ceremony, Christian hosted a quiet, celebratory lunch at an intimate, historic tavern nestled near Beacon Hill, ensuring Eleanor had the most comfortable booth and encouraging Chloe to order whatever caught her eye. Watching the billionaire patiently cut Chloe's roast chicken while listening attentively to Eleanor's stories about working in the old textile mills, Maya found herself struggling to maintain the emotional barrier she had promised to keep. On the drive back to South Boston in Christian's understated black sedan, Chloe fell fast asleep between her mother and grandmother, exhausted from the day's excitement. "Thank you for today, Christian," Maya said quietly, as they reached the curb outside her building, watching him gently lift the sleeping child into his arms to carry her up the 3 flights of stairs. You made my mother feel honored, and Chloe felt like a princess. Christian laid the little girl tenderly onto her cot, pulling the quilt up, before turning to Maya in the dimly lit hallway. "We are a team now, Maya," he whispered, his eyes lingering on her face with a warmth that felt dangerously far from a cold business transaction. "You never have to thank me for taking care of our family." Over the next month, life shifted dramatically for Maya as she adjusted to having her days freed from the grueling physical labor of commercial cleaning. With Eleanor now enrolled in an elite cardiovascular clinic in the Longwood medical area and showing miraculous daily improvements, and Chloe thriving at an exceptional private academy nearby, Maya poured her newfound time into auditing urban planning and real estate development courses online. Christian visited the apartment 2 or 3 times each week, always bringing specialized groceries, reviewing Chloe's latest watercolor landscapes, or discussing the public appearances required by the Sterling Board of Directors. "My mother, Victoria, has just returned from her philanthropic tour in Switzerland," Christian announced during a quiet Tuesday visit, looking unusually tense as he stirred his black coffee. "She wants to host a family dinner at the estate in Concord this Saturday to welcome you." Maya felt a cold knot of anxiety form in her stomach. What if she sees right through me, Christian? What if she realizes I spent last month scrubbing the very floors of your corporate headquarters? Christian reached across the kitchen table, his fingers gently covering hers. "My mother can be formidable, but she loves me. If she sees that we respect each other, she will embrace you. Just be the remarkable, honest woman you are every single day." The Sterling family estate in Concord was a breathtaking colonial manor surrounded by ancient oak trees and manicured winter gardens, its interior filled with centuries of heritage, priceless oil paintings, and roaring stone fireplaces. Victoria Sterling, an elegant woman in her late 50s with sharp silver hair and an aristocratic bearing, met them at the grand foyer, her keen blue eyes taking in Maya's modest green dress and Chloe's polished school shoes. "So, this is the woman who captured my fiercely independent son's heart almost overnight," Victoria said, her tone smooth yet probing. During the multi-course dinner served in the formal dining room, Victoria asked precise, polite questions regarding Maya's background, her perspective on community work, and how she and Christian had crossed paths. Rather than pretending to belong to Boston's elite social registry, Maya spoke with calm, unvarnished honesty about her years working double shifts, the reality of raising a child on minimum wage, and her passion for community-centered architecture that served working-class families. Beside her, Christian listened with visible pride, occasionally adding details about Maya's sharp analytical instincts and tireless dedication. After dinner, while Christian took Chloe out to the stables to see the estate's retired carriage horses, Victoria invited Maya into her private glass conservatory filled with winter orchids. "You are not what I expected for Christian, Maya," the matriarch remarked candidly, pouring 2 delicate cups of Earl Grey tea. Maya took a steady breath, meeting the older woman's gaze directly. "I know I do not come from your world, Mrs. Sterling. I do not have a pedigree or inherited wealth, but I know what it means to build a home with integrity." Victoria smiled softly, placing a warm hand over Maya's wrist. "Pedigrees are overrated, my dear. My late husband built our foundation with calloused hands. For 15 years since his father passed, Christian has carried the weight of this company entirely alone, surrounded by sycophants. For the first time in his adult life, I see light in his eyes. Take care of him." Returning home that evening as snow began to fall softly over the city, Maya looked at Christian as he navigated the quiet suburban roads, his profile illuminated by the dashboard glow. "Your mother was wonderful," Maya said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. Christian glanced over, a genuine smile touching his lips. "She loved you, Maya. And she was right about one thing. I haven't felt this grounded in 15 years. Hey." Maya looked down at her hands, feeling a deep, terrifying flutter in her heart. Realizing that the lines between their staged partnership and genuine affection had blurred beyond recognition. 2 weeks later, an urgent corporate necessity thrust Maya directly into Christian's high-stakes professional arena when Sterling Construction prepared to host a critical dinner with a consortium of Japanese infrastructure investors. Maya, our lead community liaison, fell ill, and Mr. Takahashi's firm places immense value on family stability and community integration in their development partners, Christian explained over the phone, sounding deeply stressed. "I know it is asking a massive favor, but would you accompany me tonight as my wife?" Maya arrived at the exclusive harborside restaurant, wearing a tailored black dress that Sarah had helped her select, her dark hair sweeping over her shoulders in soft, elegant waves. When Christian met her at the entrance, he stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes sweeping over her with breathtaking intensity. "You look absolutely extraordinary, Maya," he murmured, offering his arm as a genuine flush of color touched his cheekbones. Throughout the 4-hour dinner, Maya initially remained a polite, supportive listener, observing the intricate discussions of multi-million-dollar land acquisitions, zoning regulations, and steel tariffs. However, when Mr. Takahashi expressed concerns regarding the social impact of high-density urban residential towers, Maya leaned forward, speaking with a voice grounded in lived experience rather than abstract spreadsheets. "If I may offer a thought, Mr. Takahashi," she said with quiet confidence, "the failure of many urban housing projects does not stem from concrete or density. It stems from isolation. When you build residential spaces without integrated early childcare centers, communal workshops, and safe green spaces for elderly residents, you fracture the community before the foundation is even dry. If working parents have safe, on-site childcare within the residential complex, productivity rises, local economies stabilize, and the entire neighborhood thrives." The entire table of international executives fell into a stunned, reflective silence before Mr. Takahashi broke into a broad, respectful smile, bowing his head slightly toward Maya. "Your wife possesses the rare wisdom of practical humanity, Mr. Sterling. Anyone can design steel and glass, but building true communities requires understanding the heartbeat of the people living inside them. We would very much like Mrs. Sterling to serve as an executive consultant on our Boston Harbor project." Christian looked at Maya with an expression of boundless pride, reaching under the white linen tablecloth to gently squeeze her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture of profound unity. During the quiet drive back to South Boston, the atmosphere inside the car crackled with an undeniable, intoxicating electricity. Christian pulled up to the curb outside her building, turning off the engine as he looked across the console into her eyes. "You were magnificent tonight, Maya," he said softly, his voice dropping an octave as he reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear, his thumb brushing her cheek with lingering tenderness. "I have never felt prouder to stand beside anyone in my entire life. Not because of how stunning you look, but because of your heart, your brilliance, and your courage. Have you ever considered that perhaps we stumbled into something entirely real amid all this madness?" Maya's breath caught in her throat, her pulse racing as she looked into his searching amber eyes, feeling the sheer magnetic pull of the man she had grown to love against every logical rule she had set for herself. "Christian, she began, her voice trembling on the edge of a total confession, when the sudden, loud chime of Christian's emergency phone shattered the moment. He answered quickly, his expression darkening as Clara reported a catastrophic water main rupture at their downtown commercial excavation site that required his immediate presence. "I have to handle this right now," Christian said with deep frustration, leaning over to kiss Maya softly on the cheek. "We will talk about this tomorrow, Maya. I promise." Maya climbed the stairs to her apartment in a daze, leaning against her locked front door with her hand pressed against her racing heart, terrified of how deeply she had fallen for a man whose world was separated from hers by oceans of wealth and power. Yet the following morning brought a crushing emotional blow when Christian arrived at her door at dawn, looking haggard and unusually rigid. "Maya, regarding what I said last night in the car," he began awkwardly, avoiding her direct gaze. "I was overly emotional and exhausted from the contract negotiations. I should never have crossed that line or made you feel pressured. Our legal arrangement is clear, and I want to ensure you always feel respected within our agreed boundaries." The words felt like a bucket of freezing water thrown directly over Maya's vulnerable heart, shattering the delicate hope that had bloomed within her chest. "Of course, Mr. Sterling," Maya replied, with a tight, professional smile that masked the deep agony tearing through her soul. "You are completely right. It was simply the adrenaline of the business dinner. Let us keep our focus strictly on our professional partnership." Christian nodded stiffly, looking as though he wanted to say more, but the cold distance had already re-established its defensive wall between them, leaving Maya to grieve in silence for a love she believed was entirely one-sided. Over the subsequent 2 weeks, Christian maintained a strict, agonizing distance, calling only to check on Eleanor's medical appointments or to provide logistical updates regarding the urban housing project. Maya threw all her energy into her consulting duties for the harbor development, drafting comprehensive community blueprints that earned high praise from the Japanese engineering teams. It was during an afternoon meeting at the Sterling headquarters that Maya accidentally overheard a vicious confrontation that shattered the remaining illusions of her new life. Walking past the executive boardroom, Maya stopped dead in her tracks as the harsh, sneering voice of Christian's cousin, Julian Vance, resonated through the partially opened mahogany doors. "Do you really think the board is blind, Christian?" Julian spat with venomous contempt. "Marrying an illiterate cleaning girl from the South Side just in time to fulfill grandfather's 2-year trust condition? It is an insulting, pathetic legal farce. The moment your 24 months are up and you quietly discard her with a payout, I will present every piece of evidence to the probate court and take control of this entire company." Maya stood paralyzed in the corridor, the blood draining from her face as she waited desperately for Christian's defense. "Maya Jenkins is my legal wife, Julian," Christian replied in a cold, measured, detached tone. "The trust indenture required a valid marriage, and the marriage is legally binding. The company remains under my control, and you will not receive a single share. Now get out of my office." Julian let out a mocking laugh before storming toward the side exit, leaving Christian standing alone by the window. Every word felt like a physical blow against Maya's ribs, reinforcing the crushing reality that no matter how kind Christian had been, their union was ultimately viewed as a clever corporate maneuver to safeguard his empire. She turned and fled down the service stairwell, tears blurring her vision as she emerged into the freezing Boston drizzle. She walked for miles along the gray waterfront, sitting on a cold park bench near the harbor until nightfall, weeping bitter tears of grief for having allowed her heart to fall hopelessly in love with a man who was merely managing a business transaction. When Maya finally returned to her South Boston apartment late that evening, she found Christian pacing anxiously on the front sidewalk in the cold rain, his coat soaked through. "Maya, where have you been? I called your phone a dozen times," he said, rushing forward with genuine terror in his eyes as he tried to grasp her hands. Maya stepped back sharply, her eyes red-rimmed and guarded. "I was walking, Mr. Sterling, thinking about our business arrangement." "Maya, what happened? Why are you looking at me like this?" Christian asked, his voice cracking with desperation. Maya lifted her chin, tears spilling silently down her pale cheeks. "I heard your conversation with Julian this afternoon. I heard him call me an opportunistic cleaning girl, and I heard you defend our marriage as a legally binding requirement for your grandfather's will." Christian turned deathly pale, reaching out to touch her shoulder, but Maya pulled away. "You do not need to explain anything, Christian. He was right. You needed a wife to save your fortune, and I needed $2 million to save my mother and educate my daughter. It was always just business. But please, stop pretending there was ever anything real between us." Maya walked past him into the building, closing the door firmly behind her and leaning against the wooden frame as a heavy, suffocating silence filled the room. For 2 endless weeks, the silence persisted between them. Christian called daily to provide medical updates and inquire after Chloe, but Maya kept every exchange clipped to cold, monosyllabic professional courtesies. The emotional standoff was suddenly broken when Chloe developed a severe bronchial infection, running a high fever that left her shivering and weak on her small cot. Exhausted after 48 hours of sleepless nursing, Maya opened her front door at midnight to find Christian standing on the landing alongside Dr. Reynolds, the elite pediatric specialist from Boston Children's Hospital. "Clara told me Chloe was running a high fever," Christian said softly, his eyes filled with immense exhaustion and worry as he stepped into the apartment. While the doctor administered intravenous hydration and antibiotics to the feverish child, Christian sat on the edge of the cot, gently holding Chloe's small hand and brushing cool washcloths across her forehead with the patient tenderness of a devoted father. When Chloe finally drifted into a peaceful, fever-free sleep, Christian stepped into the small living room where Maya stood near the window, her arms crossed defensively. "Maya, we cannot continue living like strangers," Christian pleaded, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "What you heard in that boardroom was me protecting you from Julian's venomous threats. I had to speak in terms of legal finality to shut down his lawsuits, but none of that reflects what has happened inside my heart." Maya shook her head, tears shining in the dim lamplight. "How can I ever trust what is real, Christian? Everything started with a signed contract and a $500,000 check. It is easy to feel affection when convenience and duty are aligned." "Is that truly what you think this is?" Christian asked, his voice breaking with raw, unvarnished emotion as he pulled a folded legal envelope from his inner coat pocket and laid it quietly on the coffee table. "I had Harrison Bennett draw up full, irrevocable cancellation papers for our prenuptial and marital compensation agreement. I signed them this morning. You keep every single dollar already paid for your mother's care and Chloe's trust fund, but our legal arrangement is terminated. If I walk away from grandfather's inheritance, the company passes to the foundation board, and I lose the fortune entirely. But if I stand here as an ordinary man with nothing to offer but my soul, will you finally believe that I love you?" Maya stared at the crisp legal documents resting on the weathered coffee table, the bold signatures of the notary public gleaming under the soft living room lamp. Christian stood before her, stripped of his corporate arrogance and defensive armor, offering to surrender a multi-hundred-million-dollar empire simply to prove the purity of his devotion. You would surrender your family's entire legacy. For this? Maya whispered, her voice trembling as the sheer magnitude of his sacrifice washed over her. Christian stepped closer, his eyes locked onto hers with unwavering certainty. A legacy built on concrete and steel is worthless without someone to share its soul, Maya. You, Chloe, and your mother showed me what it means to belong to a real family. Money can be rebuilt. True love happens once in a lifetime. He leaned down, pressing a tender, lingering kiss to her forehead before quietly exiting the apartment, leaving Maya standing in the quiet room with the signed contract in her trembling hands. For 3 agonizing days, Maya found herself unable to sleep, pacing her small living room while examining the depths of her own fears. Her mother, Eleanor, sat quietly by the window, watching her daughter struggle with the weight of the decision. "Maya, my sweet child," Eleanor said softly, resting her warm hand over Maya's. "For 8 years, you have lived inside a fortress built of fear because Chloe's biological father abandoned you when things grew difficult. But Christian is not running away. He is tearing down his own empire just to stand beside you in the open field. Do not let past scars blind you to a man who would move mountains for your happiness." On Wednesday morning, Victoria Sterling arrived unannounced at Maya's doorstep, dressed in a simple cashmere sweater and carrying a box of freshly baked pastries for Chloe. Sitting across from Maya in the modest kitchen, the aristocratic matriarch spoke with the fierce candor of a mother who understood the fragility of human joy. "Christian visited the conquered estate yesterday, Maya," Victoria revealed, her eyes shimmering with quiet emotion. "He formally notified our family trustees that he was relinquishing his claim to grandfather's majority shares. In all 35 years of his life, I have never seen my son so completely at peace with a decision. He is doing this because he loves you beyond reason. Do not punish a good man for having the courage to bet everything on your heart." Later that afternoon, Maya's phone rang with an urgent, frantic call from Clara at the corporate headquarters. "Maya, you must come to the executive suite immediately," Clara whispered hurriedly over the line. "Mr. Vance called an emergency board meeting to execute the asset transfer, and Mr. Sterling is in the boardroom right now, preparing to sign over the final corporate charters to the receivership trust." Maya did not hesitate. Grabbing her coat and the legal documents from the table, she kissed Chloe goodbye and caught the first express train downtown. The glass doors of the 38th floor executive suite swung open as Maya strode through the reception area, bypassing security and pushing through the heavy mahogany boardroom doors without knocking. Inside, 20 high-level board members, corporate attorneys, and Julian Vance sat around the massive marble table, stunned as Maya Jenkins entered the room with her head held high and fire in her eyes. Christian rose immediately from his seat at the head of the table, his pen hovering above the transfer documents. "Maya, what are you doing here?" "I am here to stop you from making the absolute most foolish mistake of your life, Christian Sterling," Maya announced, her clear voice ringing across the silent chamber as she marched directly toward the center of the room. Julian let out an arrogant, triumphant sneer. "Well, look who finally arrived. The cleaning girl coming to collect her final settlement before the company falls into proper hands." Maya turned her gaze upon Julian with devastating composure, pulling the signed prenuptial agreement from her coat and tearing the heavy parchment in half with deliberate, resounding finality. "There was an agreement, Julian," Maya stated boldly, tossing the torn fragments onto the polished marble table before turning her entire focus toward Christian. Our marriage began as a practical contract born of circumstance. But Christian Sterling is a fool if he believes I will allow him to surrender his grandfather's life's work, to prove a point to the world. And an even greater fool if he thinks I need a corporate sacrifice to know his heart. Stepping directly before Christian, Maya looked deep into his stunned, moisture-filled amber eyes. I love you, Christian. I love you not for your towers, or your trust funds, or your family name. I love you because you treated my sick mother with profound honor, because you love my daughter as your own flesh and blood, and because you showed me that I am worthy of being cherished. A breathless, awe-inspiring silence enveloped the vast boardroom as Christian stood frozen, his chest heaving with overwhelming emotion before a radiant, breathtaking smile broke across his face. Are you absolutely certain, Maya? He whispered, his voice trembling with joy. I have never been more certain of anything in my entire existence, Maya answered, stepping into his embrace as Christian wrapped his strong arms around her waist, lifting her off her feet and kissing her with a ferocious, passionate honesty that erased every shadow of doubt, every legal clause, and every lingering fear. The entire boardroom erupted into spontaneous applause, led by Harrison Bennett, who adjusted his glasses with a broad, triumphant smile. Mr. Vance, Bennett announced, turning to a pale and fuming Julian. The late patriarch's trust specifically required that the majority heir establish a genuine lifelong marriage built upon mutual devotion and honor. As legal counsel, I declare that condition resoundingly fulfilled. 6 months later, beneath the historic boughs of the Concord estate surrounded by blooming summer lilacs, Maya and Christian renewed their vows in a breathtaking ceremony where 8-year-old Chloe served as the proud flower girl and Eleanor wiped away tears of profound gratitude from the front row. Life rarely unfolds along the neat, predictable lines we sketch in our youth, and the true measure of our journey is seldom found in the circumstances that bring people together, but rather in the grace, humility, and courage with which they choose to stay. For those who have navigated the long, winding seasons of adulthood, weathered the bitter winters of financial hardship, or carried the solitary burden of protecting their children against an unforgiving world, it becomes abundantly clear that love is not a fairy tale found in flawless beginnings. Genuine love is forged in the quiet, unglamorous trenches of daily life, in the patient care shown to an aging parent, in the gentle reassurance offered to a frightened child, and in the willingness to strip away pride and social standing to honor the dignity of another human being. When we allow ourselves to look past the superficial armor of wealth, status, and past betrayals, we discover that the most transformative partnerships are often born out of our deepest vulnerabilities. Maya and Christian found their redemption not within the rigid terms of a legal contract or the grand halls of inherited wealth, but in the simple, courageous decision to trust one another completely, proving that when two souls choose to lead with unwavering integrity, compassion, and sacrificial love, they build an enduring sanctuary that no earthly fortune can ever buy, and no passing storm can ever tear down.